What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Experts. I'm Wayne G, joined as always by Mark D. Mark, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. It's the hump day, as they say. I'm doing okay. How are you, Wayne?
I'm doing pretty good. I definitely have some topics that we're going to get to in the show. I am going to tease it here that I am livid about a report that came out about Bill Belichick yesterday, which I think is completely fake. But we'll get to that in the 2-minute drill or 2-minute warning. But I don't want to say.
I knew you would too. I knew you were going to be hot.
Like off the charts hot. Maybe I'll cool off by the time we get there, but hot. I do want to say, listen, I remind everybody every show, if you are watching the live stream, but you want to listen to us on Spotify, you can do that. Please make sure you are following us on the social medias. That is at NFL Experts Pod. So NFL Experts Pod on Twitter, at NFL Experts Pod on Instagram, at NFL Experts Pod on YouTube, at NFL Experts Pod on TikTok, and you can email us, NFLExpertsPod@gmail.com. We are interactive. We will talk about whatever you want. I mean, I don't really care. We are so interactive that if you want to talk about ballerinas, we'll put it on the docket. Hit us up.
Or even if you want to talk about food. I'm a lover of some good food, and tell me where it is. I want to go eat it.
That's a good save. I actually brought up ballerinas because you had mentioned to me off the air that you really wanted to talk about ballerinas, so I was trying to throw you a bone.
Okay, Wayne, that's it.
So let's get into the first topic. I actually, usually we have like these metal doors that go clang and they show you like the next topic. We're not going to do that today because I was thinking the people listening on Spotify, if you are listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. They probably don't know what the hell that is, but it's the live show. We have some cool graphics. We may bring them back, but I figure we'll just watch this. Click. There we go. Now we're on our next topic, which is Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert is done for the year, had surgery on a broken index finger. I'm curious, this was a topic I know that you want to talk about. It is kind of a big story, but at the same time, I feel like the Chargers are 5-8. You're looking at their schedule coming up. I think, isn't this really just the nail in the coffin for Staley? This is it. Like when Herbert went down, because there's no way you're winning any more games. You're done. You're 5-12. That's how you're finishing.
Yeah, I would hope that Brandon Staley's job's over with after this because, like you said, they're not going to win any more games with who's the guy's name? Easton Stick, I believe his name is. Yeah, but can we talk about like at the beginning of the year, all these people came out, not us experts, but other so-called experts came out and said that the Chargers were going to be really, really good. And look, this is what happens. I'm not blaming the injury or anything. The injury really sucks for Herbert because I really like him. But as for the team, I kind of saw something like this coming. Chargers doing Charger things.
Yeah, I mean, they're not great. I will throw it into the chat real quick. We do have some guests here. We got John Peeble says, "What up, all? What's going on, John?" We do have Jim Powell, one of our regulars here. What's up, fellas? What's going on? And John also says, and the Raiders will see to it, yes, that the Chargers are not going to do well. I mean, it's not going to take much to beat the Chargers at this point. It wasn't hard to beat them in the first place, but now it's even easier to beat them. I know that you said the so-called experts, quote unquote, had picked this team to finish a little bit better than they were doing. I don't want to crap on the fake experts because as a real expert, I did pick the Patriots to go 12-5 or 11-6, and I'm nowhere near that now. I wasn't expecting Judon to get hurt. I wasn't expecting Gonzalez to get hurt, and I wasn't expecting Mac Jones to be a bag of crap, although I should have because he was last year. So sometimes we get it wrong. The fake experts get it wrong, and the real experts get it wrong sometimes.
I wasn't meaning to crap on anyone. I'm just saying there's a lot of people out there pumping up the Chargers, and I'm just saying slow it down just a little bit. That's all.
But would you agree if Staley's out, this is the most desirable job for a head coach, whether that's Harbaugh or whoever? Like this is the job that your coaches want.
We have talked about that off air many times. I think that the Chargers is the most desirable job. I'm really surprised that Sean Payton didn't wait it out another year and go there instead of coming to the Broncos.
Yeah. I mean, the Broncos is in a bad situation. You had Russ, a Hall of Fame quarterback. He wasn't at the end of his career by any means. He's having a great year this year. So I get it. I mean, why wait a year, especially if he wants to coach right away?
Well, I'm glad for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that that's what I kind of thought was going to happen. But yeah, dude, it's the most desirable job out there. Who knows if Harbaugh is going to want to leave his college job? I hear they're trying to offer him a big old deal to try to get him to stay. So, but either way, like, are the Chargers going to do the same thing like they always do and do Charger things? And like, they probably could have had a better coach instead of Staley. And who else did they have? Anthony Lynn was their other coach. These are guys who were like low-level coordinators because they got these guys because they didn't want to pay somebody good like Sean Payton who wanted, $20 million a year. Like, are the Chargers going to pay their next coach? Like, that's my thought.
I think so. I mean, they're not. I do want to point out too. John said that's what makes us human is getting things wrong. But and then Jim says we'll see Belichick in the division next year. Watch Wayne's face. Well, I'm just going to laugh because unless you guys are planning on becoming Buffalo Bills fans, you are not going to see Bill Belichick in your division next year because he's going to be coaching the Patriots. And then John has Peyton has things clicking right now. I mean, Sean Payton. And so to answer your question, I do want to say I don't think they're afraid to pay somebody. I just think that it's the availability. Staley was already under contract, when Peyton went to Denver. So you're not going to fire Staley before the season to get Peyton. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense because he was under contract. You're going to have to pay him and Peyton, So I don't think they're afraid to. I think they'll pay. It's timing. And Staley wasn't a bad hire because you have to remember he had just coached the Rams to the Super Bowl, had the number one defense in the NFL, scoring-wise, yards-wise, turnovers-wise. So he seemed like a decent head coach being a hot defensive coordinator, but I don't know. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't.
I don't know, man. I just feel like they could have paid someone last year, someone better than Staley. They could have fired Staley last year and got someone, and now they're going to do it this year. So it's kind of like a year late. So I kind of feel like maybe some of those coaches like Sean Payton, maybe they missed out because they thought that job wasn't available, and now it's going to be available.
Well, if they get Harbaugh, then they didn't really miss out, because they're going to get Harbaugh, who's probably the most sought after, I would think, coach in the offseason.
Yeah. Like, I don't know who they're going to get. There's a lot of good candidates out there, but I don't have a lot of faith. I'm a Bronco fan, as you know, Wayne, so I don't got a lot of faith in the Chargers. They're going to do Charger things. I've seen it over and over and over again.
We're going to move on to a more exciting topic for me. Anyways, I'm very passionate about some of these things. But first, Jim says the danger is Brady. He could bring BB to Vegas or Harbaugh. More likely Harbaugh because, like I said, BB is going to stay in New England. And we have the Rams were loaded that year. They absolutely were loaded that year. But they had a good coordinator as well. So, I mean, I don't want to crap on them for that. And then I hope the Chargers get McDaniels. Well, McDaniels isn't going to be a head coach ever again. I mean, it doesn't matter what he does from here on. And listen, I think I've said before on the show, I'm a McDaniels guy. I think he is the best offensive mind in the NFL today, maybe ever. But he's one of the best offensive minds of all time, and he's the number one offensive mind today. But I don't want him as the head coach of my team. I want him as an offensive coordinator, 100%, 7 days out of 7. But I don't want him as a head coach.
He's not a head coach. I think he's lost those chances, man.
John says, keep Harbaugh in Ann Arbor. Well, we'll see. There's going to be a lot of demand for him. All right. Ka-ching. Up next, we have the Eagles and the Cowboys. So the Cowboys win 33-13 against the Eagles. I know that I had, I didn't predict this one. I predicted the 49ers, I think, beating the Eagles. But so let's just talk about the game in general, because obviously this was a big deal because I had the Eagles lower on my power rankings than a lot of people had them. I know that Jim, who's in the chat, hated where I had the Eagles, and I said they're just not a strong team. They're barely beating bad teams. They're losing to bad teams. And it was only a matter of time before they play a team. And when they played the Cowboys the first time, November 5th, which I call this game the V for Vendetta game, right? Remember the 5th of November. On November 5th, they beat the Cowboys by 4 points, or something, 4 or 5 points. So now the Cowboys show they're on a roll. They beat the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles ever had a chance in this game. So let's just talk about the game. We're going to talk about how both teams are going to play out the rest of the season. But what did you think about this game? Were you surprised at how big of a margin it was? Were you surprised at who won?
I was actually really surprised. Like I know the Cowboys are a really good team, but I kind of thought the Eagles have owned them over this time. But man, they really blew them away. And but I'm wondering, will the same outcome be if like the Cowboys were to play them in Philadelphia? You know, where they're not used to play. Like the Cowboys are one of those teams that play better at home. You know, and like I feel like they have an advantage at home. They're faster, so I feel like that was a lot of reason why they beat the Eagles. But I just got to say, Wayne, it's really hard for me to talk anything positive about the Cowboys because I just like them so much. But I'm going to, and I'm impressed. And I hate that I'm saying that.
Yeah. Well, they're a really good team. Their defense is really good. Their offense is clicking on all cylinders. Everything seems to be going well for them. I don't know if they played in Philadelphia, if it would make a difference or not. Again, like I said, Philadelphia is just not been beating the pants off of anybody, and they're barely beating teams. And so I think it's funny that you did say that the Cowboys are a team that plays better at home, or one of those teams that plays better at home. What's one of those teams that doesn't play better at home? Like who likes to play on the road that does really well on the road, but not at home?
I don't know. Like I was saying, I feel like they're just like faster at home. I don't know. Like they play in the dome. Like, I don't know. They're just quicker at dome in the dome. They go somewhere else out in the elements. It's not necessarily the same thing,
Maybe, but I'll tell you exactly why they can still beat Philadelphia, because Philadelphia's pass defense is abysmal. I mean, their passer rating against is 95.4. So they are allowing other teams' quarterbacks to shred them. And those are bad quarterbacks that are shredding them, like Zach Wilson when he beat them, right? Now you play a guy like Dak Prescott, who's an MVP candidate. We're going to talk on that in a second. They have no chance because once you get into the playoffs, every quarterback you face is going to shred your defense. The Eagles, I don't think, have a defense to make a deep Super Bowl run, to make a deep NFC Championship run even. I think the Cowboys are the better team. We're going to touch on in a second. I do think the Eagles are going to finish better and have a higher seed, but I think the Cowboys are more poised to make a deeper run.
I think you're right on that. I think you hit it right on the head when you said about the Eagles don't have the defense this year, dude. They don't. Like, they don't have the defense they had last year. Like, you can totally tell, like you said, because they're barely beating teams. Like, they had to come back and remember there was the overtime game against the Bills to win that game. So, like you said, and that's a good team. So they barely beat them. So yeah, they're definitely. And last year they were just rolling over teams. So yeah, you're right. They're definitely not the same team as they was last year, and it's largely because of the defense.
Now, Jim Powell does say that human nature sucks, but there isn't a team in the league that would have beaten the Cowboys Sunday night. I think the 49ers would have. That's a team that I think is going to beat the pants off of everybody. I don't think anyone has a chance of beating them, barring injury. John says it would. Philly wins in Philly. So he thinks that Philly would win in Philly. And it would be in Philly if they play again, because here's what I have going on. We're going to talk about how these teams are going to finish out the season. The Philadelphia Eagles, their remaining schedule is the Seahawks, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Giants. That's 4 straight wins. Okay, so they're going to be 14-3 to end the season. The Cowboys play the Bills, the Dolphins, the Lions, the Commanders. So they could potentially be 11-6, when all is said and done. So I do think Philly's going to win the NFC East, which means it's a home game for them if these teams play again. But here's why I think Dallas is the better team. I'm sorry, I don't think we'll get into that in a second. So that's how they're going to finish. Philly's going to have the home field advantage in the playoffs. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. Do you think I'm right? I mean, does Philly win out against the Seahawks, Giants, and Cardinals? Because that's 4 bad teams.
Yeah, I can see that. I see them win a division. They said on the TV the other day that if they do win out, they will win the East. So yeah, they'll be at home for a playoff game. So Dallas will have to travel there if that's who they play. But I'm not sure how the seeding is going to work out yet. So we don't know who they're going to play. But like you were saying about, like, I don't see San Francisco beating Dallas. I mean, I don't see Dallas beating San Francisco either. I think San Francisco is by far the best team in the NFL, and the NFC is going to go through them.
Well, I'm glad you brought up San Francisco, because I was just going to bring up these statistics. Right after saying that I think Dallas is better than Philly, I'm actually going to do a 180 here, because against San Francisco, Dallas managed 8 first downs. Them and Philly both got blown out by San Fran. San Fran had their way with both teams, but Dallas had 8 first downs against San Fran. Philly had 23 first downs against San Francisco. Dallas had 197 yards. Philly had 333. Dallas had 4 turnovers against San Fran. Philly didn't turn the ball over against San Fran. So it's crazy to think that how good Philly played against them, they still got blown out. That's how good San Fran is. But maybe Philly is the better team. I don't know. Obviously, head-to-head, they lost this one. They won the one in Philadelphia. The next one's going to be in Philadelphia. I don't know. Maybe Philly does win it. I don't think they're going to get to that point, though. I think Dallas, unless they play each other in the first round, I don't think it's going to get to an NFC championship between these two.
No, but it would be another cool matchup to see, though, I think, in the playoffs.
Now, I do have to say, Jim says the Niners don't win if they play the Cowboys Sunday. They were clicking. Will that be the case against Buffalo? We won't know until they show up. Any given Sunday is true. I say it all the time because this past week we saw a lot of upsets. I mean, any given Sunday, any team can win or lose. That's the full saying, and it's true. I mean, San Fran could lose in the first round of the play. It's probably not likely, but they could lose their first round matchup when they play. Because you never know.
It could happen. I saw the Broncos lose in '96 to the Jaguars. So, yes, anything could happen.
Byron Leftwich, right? Or was that Mark Brunell?
Brunell.
Okay. So John People says, check the supercomputer on warm climate heaps in cold weather. The computer is not that in depth.
Good question, John.
We're going to talk about the supercomputer. It may come out to that. I mean, yeah, it could come out to the San Fran, I think, versus Dallas or San Fran versus Philly, but I don't think these two teams are going to play each other. Again, barring an injury, San Fran just looks way too good. All right, MVP. Obviously everyone loves Dak Prescott as MVP. Now I feel like the MVP right now is a 3-man race, right? And I don't think that Tyreek Hill is in that race. And a lot of people want to throw him in saying he's having an MVP season. And
he should be. He should be. He should be.
But should he? I mean, it's a wide receiver position. Your quarterback still has to throw you the ball. You're kind of a product of your symbiotic relationship. I brought up in other chats that Calvin Johnson, had a record-setting year. He kept Matt Stafford in the NFL when Stafford should have been out of the league, and yet Calvin Johnson was never even a top 3 in MVP voting. Why not?
I don't know, dude. Like, I'm not. I just think that I don't want to. I don't want to argue or anything. But I don't think. Oh, wait, what were we talking about again? Sorry.
I said Tyreek Hill has no chance at MVP.
Tyreek Hill. I would just say, but dude, this guy is the Miami Dolphins are nothing without this guy. He is he's a lineup nightmare. He's the fastest guy in the league. He's the team wouldn't be nothing without him. He's probably gonna break that record that Calvin Johnson had. I just think the NFL needs to kind of break their way of thinking of always giving it to a quarterback and give it to a guy that's like this, who's a total match total match nightmare for any team.
Again, this is why it goes to a quarterback. Okay, right? Is because when Tyreek Hill catches the ball, right, and all the catches he's getting, and all the yards he's getting, and all the touchdowns he's getting, right? Who's throwing him the ball?
The quarterback, yeah, I know, sure. But I'm just saying.
And then when the quarterback's not throwing him to the ball, does he throw it to other people too?
Yes.
So all of their yards and all of their touchdowns and all of their receptions are his as well. So it's not. I mean, yes, Tyreek might have the bulk, but the quarterback has all of the yards and all of the touchdowns, right?
I don't know. I just wish the NFL would think outside the box.
Yeah, maybe. I know John thinks it's a politics. I don't think it's politics. Like I said, I think it's just the quarterback's the most important player on every team. Even if he's not the best player on every team, he's the most important player on every team. MVP goes through New York if they get anywhere because DeVito's not even close to MVP. CMC is interesting. CMC is an interesting one because
he's another one. That's another one that should be considered. He's awesome. CMC, he's a big reason why the Niners are good.
He's a big reason, not the big reason. And his performance is overshadowed by Brock Purdy, who is right now the best quarterback in the NFL statistically, when you look at his statistics across the board. And that's why I was saying that Dak has no shot of winning MVP either, because Brock Purdy right now, if we look at the numbers, even versus Dak, they're both 10-3. Dak is completing 69.3% of his passes, pretty respectable, right? Close to 70. Brock Purdy's at 70.2, so he's completing more passes. Dak has 3,505 yards. Purdy has 3,553, so he's out throwing him. Touchdown to interception ratio, Dak is 28-6, Purdy's 25-7, so a little bit fewer there. Passer rating, 107 for Dak, 117 for Purdy. There's still 4 games left in the season, but I just said the schedule that the Cowboys have to play. I don't think Dak Prescott's going to put up the numbers to surpass Purdy. I think that basically this is his award now.
Like, I agree with you. I totally agree. Like, Purdy is probably the front runner. Dak is he's done well this year to be put in this conversation. So, but I don't think he's going to be the one to win. Like I told you a few episodes ago, I think the Cowboys get a lot of extra love, from the national media because they're America's team. So, I
guess as far as being a case for CMC, John does say he catches balls out of the backfield and he rushes for 100 yards a game still. That's true. Again, he's a very valuable piece. But again, Purdy's the one throwing him the ball and everybody else. Purdy's the one handing the ball off. I think the biggest knock against all of these guys was that their defenses are really the main star, right? Ravens with Lamar Jackson, because I think he's third in this race. The Ravens defense is bananas. The 49ers defense, we know what they are. The Cowboys defense. So all of these teams are 10-3, but they're all kind of carried by their defenses, and their quarterbacks are an afterthought. But none of them have a defensive player that's setting the world on fire. I mean, Michael Parsons is amazing, but I don't think he's got MVP numbers. I think if the Browns were 10-3, we might be talking about Myles Garrett as possible MVP. But I don't think the 49ers, even Bosa, I don't think any of these guys have a defensive MVP. So I think, again, I'm going to stick with Purdy on this one.
I'm with you. Purdy for MVP.
Jim Powell calls him Al Bundy Jr. No way. He's not that guy. Put Jimmy G in San Francisco. Well, that's called an if argument, Jim. And if you know anything about me, if you've watched me argue with Brandon, because Brandon is on Man Hour Radio, they're one of our friends over there. Me and Brandon argue. Brandon likes to say if a lot. Well, if this happens, or if this happened, or if they had this, or if means that you can't prove it, right? So every time somebody uses an if comment, I throw back an even more ridiculous one. So you're saying if Jimmy G is the San Francisco quarterback, he does the same numbers. I'm going to say if Brock Purdy is in New England, they're undefeated. So prove me wrong.
I don't like if questions either, so I'll agree with you, Wade.
You're full of it tonight. He's talking about you, Mark. He said you're full of it tonight. How hard is it to hand the ball off to CMC? I don't know. It's pretty hard. I used to mess up handoffs all the time in high school. As CMC goes down, so do the Niners. I don't think so. I think that they can actually, have Purdy throw the ball 40 times and they'll be fine. He's very accurate. Obviously, having CMC helps, but I think he's fine without him. He's a Bears fan. What do I expect? Who's a Bears fan? Brandon is a Bears fan. And CMC isn't in New England. I know that. I said if Brock Purdy was in New England, that they'd be undefeated. Okay, so that's all of our San Fran and Philly. Any final thoughts on San Fran versus Philly, their future, Dak Prescott?
I don't think Dak's an MVP. I don't think they're going to beat the Niners. I think it's going to be another Eagles-49ers matchup for the NFC title game.
Okay. And let's see. One more. John says, isn't when the Niners lost? Oh, I guess he's saying that Purdy wasn't elite when the Niners were losing. No, he wasn't. We talked about that last show that his tackle was out. He was getting a lot of pressure. It does happen. Let's get on the
Debo Samuel was also out those weeks also.
Yeah, tough game for him. Here we go. Next time. This is one that Mark didn't even want to talk about when I said we're talking about it because Jake Browning has won his second game in a row. I was pulling up his numbers from the last 3 games. And we'll go over that in a second. But here's why Mark didn't want to talk about this and why I did, and I thought it was an interesting topic. Jake Browning, I think Mark agrees with me, is playing amazing right now. And
yes.
The question was, what is next for him? Whether that's another backup job, a starting job. And I said, what about him just being the quarterback for the Bengals and kicking Joe Burrow out? And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I said the conversation has to be had. Mark thought that was laughable. Mark, why is it laughable that Jake Browning could dethrone Joe Burrow, the Tiger King?
Because it's Joe Burrow, dude. Like, let this guy. Okay, the only way this guy is taking over for Joe Burrow, which isn't going to happen, is if he takes this team all the way to the playoffs and they go all the way to the playoffs and they beat everybody and they go on to win the Super Bowl. They win their first Super Bowl for the Bengals ever. Even then, I don't think they're getting rid of him for Joe Burrow.
All right, so here's why I said that there is a conversation. First of all, I agree with you. They're not getting rid of Joe Burrow. But it's not because of how good he is. It's because they just signed him to a 5-year, $275 million contract that starts next season. Next season, he starts making $55 million a year. They can't trade him. They can't do anything. They have to play him, and he's not going to be a backup making that kind of money. But here's the argument and why you should have the conversation. 1, Joe Burrow has played 4 seasons. He hasn't finished 2 of them. So half of his career has ended on the IR. 2, look at the stats here. Jake Browning, over the last 3 games, 79.3%, almost 80% of his passes he's completing. And if you watch the games, he's throwing ropes. I mean, just real nice passes to these receivers, throwing them open. 285 yards a game. Let's compare that to Joe Burrow's career, 68%, right? Nowhere near 80. 270 yards per game, nowhere near 285. But that's Joe's career. That's taking into account the season that he was running for MVP, which I think was last year. He was in the running for MVP. Let's just look at how Joe's doing this year. This year, 66%, 230 yards per game. He has not looked good this year. He's been good for his career. Jake Browning is playing amazing right now. So what I'm going to ask you, like I said, I already agree that Burrow's in because you can't do anything with that money. I'm going to ask you, if both of these guys, this is an if question, but if both of these guys were making $5 million a year, would you feel the same way that Burrow had no shot being dethroned?
Yeah, so for me, dude, the money doesn't come into it. It's like talent. I've only seen this guy for a small sample size. I need to see him for, like I said, the rest of this year. And I'm as we say, we're the NFL experts, and I feel like I'm an expert on what I see and what I watch. And this guy's really good, but at some point it's going to fizzle out, and the rest of the NFL is going to have tape on him and figure him out also. And then this is going to be all over with. That's why I laughed when you said the conversation needs to even be talked about. And I was just like, well, maybe if he won a bunch more, then we talk about it. But he hasn't won enough yet.
Well, and I understand that. I'm saying if he finishes the year at 80% and 285, I mean, the argument is there. I'm just saying he's on pace for it. And it's okay to say, hey, if he keeps this up, I'm not saying right now, hey, after 3 games, you want to just give him Joe's contract? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, if he continues for the next 4 games to look like this, I think it's going to be a really interesting camp. I think he moves on because you can probably get something for him. And I'm going to ask you that in a second. I want to throw up some of these comments. So John does say, see Nick Foles, maybe, but Nick Foles was a starter at one point. He was signed to be a starter at one point. So that's not ridiculous. It's been how long since they've been to the show? The Bengals were just there last year, right? Or 2 years ago, they lost.
Yep.
Or no, they made it to the AFC Championship game, right? They lost to the.
No, Chiefs. They were in the Super Bowl against the Rams.
Okay.
They lost to the Rams.
I thought so. Okay. He says he's a proven winner. I'm guessing he's talking about Joe Burrow. I mean, is he? He hasn't won the Super Bowl yet. So
he won the college national title, and he had like one of the best career seasons for a college quarterback ever.
Not as good as Bailey Zappi's. So I guess Bailey Zappi should be getting more money than Joe Burrow. All right. So, anyways, we're not going to throw statistics out. I'm a statistics king over here. So, all right. So if you're like, he's not going to surpass Burrow, would you agree that if he continues to play this way, he's a trade chip? They can send him somewhere for something.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. What do they get in return for him if he finishes the year like this? What do they get in return? Who is willing to give it?
I was just going to say that. I was like, it all depends on who the buyer is. Like if it's a team that's desperate, the Bengals could get more from them. If they're not so desperate, they might not get as much. So it all depends. So I don't know, maybe 4th, 5th round pick.
At that point, I'd rather keep him as a backup.
They could do that too.
Which actually, this is what John says, is setting him up for backup next year. Same time, different injury. Yeah, let's Joe Burrow's, MO is that he gets hurt. Although he gets hurt every other year, so next year he should be healthy. But the year after that, he'll get hurt. So having Jake Browning as the backup is not so bad. He's a good backup. I was trying to think about it. I was trying to think like who would bring him in as a starter. I don't think anyone would bring him in as an outright starter. I think they would bring him in to compete to be a starter. And like you said, for that, you're looking at a 5th round pick, right? Maybe a 4th or conditional, right? If he does win the starting job, he gets a 4th. I don't know. I think if I'm the Bengals at that point, 4th or 5th round pick, I'd rather just keep him as a backup. Why would I send him somewhere else for that?
I don't know. The Bengals do have Burrow, so I mean, I don't know. Like he has to play really well for them to get any trade value from him.
Right. Well, exactly. And he doesn't have loads of talent. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. Justin Fields might go for a 2nd round pick. So it's like tough to get any sort of value for guys, you know, when your team's passing on them. Jim says, why pump him up? Keep his head small. And if he's needed again, there you go. All right. So nothing wrong with giving a guy an
Not a bad take. Not a bad take.
The Raiders, yeah. Well, the Raiders got Aiden O'Connell. You don't want to ride Aiden O'Connell to several championships. Really, I think Jake Browning has a very similar Jimmy G kind of thing about him. Like he's just not going to make mistakes. You know what I mean? He's not going to set the world on fire, but he's not going to make mistakes. Yeah, so that's what I have to say on that. I mean, I don't know. I know that this wasn't even a topic that you thought we should bring up, but I thought it was important to discuss. I don't know if you had any final thoughts on Jake Browning.
I don't know. I think you had a good point about them keeping him, you know, like because Joe Burrow is hurt all the time, you know, so it wouldn't be a bad idea.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the next topic is the Ravens and the Rams, 37-31, overtime, punt return for a touchdown. Pretty exciting game. Yeah, pretty exciting game. The thing that really blew me away, though, I know everyone talks about the punt return because that was the game winner, right? But for me, it was watching Lamar Jackson. And I bring this up all the time. I know I brought it up last week, the idea that once you put receivers around him and once you give him an offensive coordinator who's going to scheme for him to pass rather than run, he is electric. He's got an electric arm. He can throw on the run. He can throw from the pocket, multiple arm angles. In that game, he went 24 of 43 for 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he ran for 70 yards. I don't like seeing him run as much anymore because I mean, I'm glad he's not carrying the ball 20 times a game because that was just going to get him hurt. But, I mean, Lamar Jackson is looking like I would put him in the same category as a Josh Allen or a Trevor Lawrence.
Definitely, dude. Like, I'm going to say that the Ravens are probably right now, because the AFC, we're going to talk about this later about their playoff picture, but out of the AFC right now, I feel like they're the elite of the AFC. Because, like, if you think about, like, the top teams in the league, you think of the 49ers, the Eagles, the Cowboys. But then I want to throw in the Ravens in that 4, you know? So it's like, I feel like they are one of the top teams in the AFC. And it's a lot of reason because of him, man. And like you said, he's finally getting an offense that's suited around him. He's not running as much. So he's stayed healthy this whole season. So that's a really good thing because usually this time of year, he's always hurt. Like he has his most injuries during this time of year. So, you know, obviously it's working.
Yeah. And he is healthy. And that's the big thing. As long as he's healthy, they're a team that can go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. It has been injuries that have hampered him in the past. I mean, he hasn't missed like a half a season or anything like that, but it's always like at the end of the year. He does something, whether it's an ankle or something. He does something at the end of the year, which is the worst time because then he gets to the playoffs. And that's why he has this, aura about him where it's like, oh, he can't win a playoff game. Well, because he's hurt. He hurts himself in the second to last week or the last week of the season.
Yep. So that's what I mean. So it's got a whole different Ravens team this year. So I kind of see them as one of the AFC teams going to Super Bowl possibly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Ravens and the 49ers. I've said before, my heart tells me I want the Ravens to win. I want to see Lamar get that Super Bowl MVP. However, my head tells me it would be the 49ers beating them. John does say, I wish they would have gotten Mayfield. The Raiders, he means gotten Baker Mayfield. And then best team in the AFC. I don't think he's talking about the Raiders. He probably means the Ravens. We agree.
Definitely not talking about the Raiders, Wayne.
And when it counts, meaning I guess you got to win when it counts. And I agree with that. I mean, that's the thing. He's got to be healthy. I think if he's healthy going into the playoffs, they're your favorite in the AFC. I think that they can beat Kansas City. I think they can beat Buffalo. I think they can beat. There's nobody they can't beat. Their defense is like top. It's San Fran's defense, Baltimore's defense, 1-2. And Baltimore's offense, like I said, with the newfound spread passing. And Lamar still can run. Like I said, ran for 70 yards in this game. He can run. So I'd say don't sleep on his legs. He's just not running because he doesn't have to.
Dude, that would be a very interesting Super Bowl. So that's definitely a possibility for sure.
And of course, John says you got jokes. Yeah, I guess I mean, I thought the Ravens. I thought you were being serious about the Ravens being not the Raiders. All right, so this is something I thought was funny. This was actually a topic that you brought to my attention, and it made me laugh out loud when I saw it come over. You said, "Is Joe Flacco still elite?" And
I just put that out there to you, Wayne, because like, remember how back in the day everybody was like, "Is Joe Flacco elite?" Blah blah blah. Remember? Come on.
Well, my question was going. Don't backpedal. You sent me the things saying, "Is Joe Flacco still elite?" And my response,
I'm not backpedaling. I'm just saying, like, it was a joke, partly too.
Was he ever elite? Because I was like, this is a guy who's had a 16-year career, and only 3 times in his 16 years has he averaged over 250 yards a game. Not even 300, like 250. He's only done that 3 times. This guy was never elite. He rode the coattails of a defense. Now, what I will say I love about Joe Flacco is when the Ravens offered them that big contract, but it wasn't big enough for him. And he said, "You know what? I'm just going to play out the last year of this deal." And he won the Super Bowl, and he won the Super Bowl MVP, and then they had to back up the Brinks truck, as they say to him. And I thought, good for you, man. Bet on himself and win. I like guys when they bet on themselves and win. The Ravens lost in that, though, because then they had to pay him the next 4 or 5 years, and he was just Joe Flacco.
Like, I agree with you, man. I don't think he's elite either. That's why I like kind of laughed, like, because I heard this pop up on another show, and I was like, well, we're gonna talk about it too. Why not? Like, I've never thought he was elite. Like, I hate talking about this guy because he beat us in the playoffs when I think that was like the best year that we had as a Broncos team with Peyton Manning. And you remember the play, the Mile High Miracle, whatever they call it for them, when they beat us. We went into triple overtime. I was at that game, so bad memories, dude.
So let's see here. We got some more comments. John Peebles, I'm interested. Denver, like I said, he has them clicking. Oh, yeah, Sean Payton has Denver clicking, sure. Lukewarm. John, we screwed up when we let Levis sitting by the hooker on draft night. He's the man. Okay, yeah, I definitely like I'm a big Will Levis fan. Let's see. Don't snooze on the Browns. Their defense will keep them close to anybody. Not with their quarterback, they won't. I mean, that team turns the ball over twice as many times as they get turnovers, as good as that defense is. They need to score points. Their defense is not the Ravens. It is not the 49ers. They cannot shut people out every game. And when they get into the playoffs, and if they get in the playoffs, and they're playing Kansas City and Buffalo and teams in Baltimore, they're not going to get any shutouts. They need to score points. They can't score points. That's why I don't think Baltimore is legit. Cleveland is legit. Let's see. You still have the 80-yard drive by Elway. Hey, there you go. Were you allowed
Didn't
for
win
that?
the Super Bowl that year either, though.
We were discussing this off the air. Is that Mark here's a millennial, so he remembers the drive, of course. All right. So that's Joe Flacco. It's definitely enough time spent on Joe Flacco.
No, he's not elite. It was partly a joke and then partly to fill in some time. But yeah, he's not elite. Never was elite. He doesn't want to give it up, Wayne. Like, he doesn't want to give it up. He's like holding on. He's like to any team that will have him. Like, basically now he's starting for the Browns. Okay, so he starts a game, then they put him right back to practice squad, which means any team can claim him, which no team probably will claim him because nobody needs him. Nobody wants him. So he'll stay on the Browns, and then when they need him again next week, they'll pull him off the practice squad and play him again. So he's basically just getting used by the Browns because you can't let go.
Hey, he's getting a paycheck. I can't remember who it was. Was it Bill Burr? It was some comedian that was talking about, like, man, I would play until I was dead. Like, he goes, I don't care. I'd be like 70 years old. And they'd be like, well, now we're only going to pay you for the practice squad. He's like, yeah, what's that paying? $1 million a year? I'll take it.
That's what I mean. So he's in that category.
And before I switch over to the next topic, what do we got here? Solid backup. Well, solid practice squad guy. Really solid backup on the Browns because their quarterback situation's a mess. And then let's see Joe Burrow. Yeah. And actually, we got a long one here. The problem is, in my life, I have always been an AFC fan, but the NFC has always been the bougie couple in the double wide. The AFC is the single wide trailer park. It's hard for me to give the NFC props, but it's their championship to lose this year. So the whole NFL is just a trailer park, I guess.
He's saying the AFC is a bad trailer park, apparently, or something.
Oh yeah, versus the upscale trailer park. All right, the story that was big right after having offsides, right? Offensive offsides. The Kansas City Chiefs, Kadarius Toney lines up in the neutral zone. The Chiefs throw a pass to Kelsey. Kelsey laterals it. We get a touchdown. Flags are out. It's coming back, right? First and foremost, I do want to ask you about this because I saw somebody's like cell phone recording that they had online from like the sideline, like a 50-yard line kind of view, and it looks like he puts his hand up to the referee saying, "Am I good?" And the referee just stood there with his hands down. I don't know the rule. I don't know if the referee has to acknowledge them or not, but it does look like he checked with the ref to see if he was onside.
No, if you watch the tape, like he just kind of puts his arm over, but he doesn't like literally look over. He just kind of he doesn't get any response from the ref, like you said. So like he acts like he does it, but he doesn't really do anything because he didn't get any reaction from the ref. So he like thinks, "Oh, I'm good," but he wasn't good. He was clearly offsides. Like, and then you hear all this crying from Andy Reid and Mahomes after the game about the refs. Like, dude, the guy was clearly offsides. It's like, what else do you want them to do? Like, it wasn't like they pulled the flag like after they did the good play and scored. You know, it was like literally they threw it right after, like, as soon as the play went off, like he was offsides, like, and they want to complain about it. Like, that's what made me mad. Like, the refs do suck. We talked about how bad they are and how bad they have been this season, but like, you got to play better than the refs ref. I've always said that.
Well, again, I go back to what is the referee's responsibility there? If the wide receiver puts his hand out, does the referee have to say, "No, you need to back up"? I don't know. I'm not an NFL referee. I've never been a referee in a football game, so I don't know when the receiver does that. What your responsibility? Do you shake your head? Do you say you have to back? Like, what is the referee supposed to do when the wide receiver asks him, "Am I lined up right?"
The ref is supposed to tell him if he's onside or not. And so if he like looked over, like basically if he would have actually moved his head over and like asked the guy, "Am I good?" the ref would have been like, "You're good," or been like, "Or step back." The guy Toney didn't do that. So the ref's like, "Okay, you're not going to ask me. You're going to be outside." Offsides.
I don't know. I agree with being upset at the refs only because it was an end of the game situation. I played basketball in high school. That was my sport. And I remember we had a game where we lost at the buzzer. Our point guard thought he got fouled shooting a three, and it wasn't called, right? So he freaks out. He runs into the locker room. He throws a chair against the lockers. He's losing his mind. Very similar to the tantrum that Patrick Mahomes had. So I get it. Like in a close game, when you feel like that cost you, like, and you feel like the refs should have done something. Again, he put his hand up. I don't know what the ref is supposed to do. What I think is funny, Andy Reid said after the game, the refs are supposed to tell us if the guys are lined up offside. I'm like, are they? Do they like just do that? Like, hey, your guy's offside. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I know if they ask, they're supposed to tell them, but I didn't know that the referee was just supposed to tell you if they don't ask.
I didn't know that either. I thought they were supposed to just tell them, like, if they ask, like, "Hey, am I online?" Then they'll tell you. You know, that's what I've always thought it was.
Now, Jim says here, if you run a red light 19 times and only get pulled over the 20th, does that mean you didn't do wrong? Yes, Jim. There's a great quote in the movie Blue Chips with Shaquille O'Neal and Nick Nolte, where Anthony Hardaway's mom says to Nick Nolte, "A foul is not a foul unless the referee blows the whistle." So when I played basketball, I used to grab shorts. I would, step on people's feet. I would do whatever I could get away with. And you know what? I didn't break any rules and I didn't commit a single foul. If I throw an elbow to somebody's face and it shatters their nose, I didn't foul them unless the whistle blows. Let's see. The receiver has to get his attention. Okay. Well, that seems like a lot of work. Hey, look at me. Hey.
That's what I'm saying. He was supposed to get his attention, and he didn't totally get the guy's attention, so that's why he's offsides.
And then John says, "Don't get me started on the refs. They suck more every year."
We talked about
they're having
this.
a tough year. I think that they're still pretty good, all things considered. See, you should have been ready. Yeah, well, I don't know. I do. I don't say I like to play dirty. I'm just saying I play within the framework of the rules. You want to call me for a foul, call me for a foul. But if you're not going to, I'm going to do it every time. All right. So now the second part of this story is: did this cost the Chiefs the game? And I'll ask you that question because I have a take on it, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. Did this play cost the Chiefs that game?
Did it cost them the game? It's a good question. Of course, it cost them the game because it was like a call that they didn't need to have at that moment. So, but it was the right call. So, like they got that same kind of call in their favor in the Super Bowl last year. So you know what? Like I don't feel bad for them. It's the Chiefs. They're another division in my team that I hate, Wayne. So no, I don't care. Like, and they're crybabies about it. Like even Mahomes, even after the game, even during his little like. He's supposed to man up and go to Josh Allen and be like, good game, and he couldn't even do that. He was still complaining about the call.
Tom Brady used to walk off the field without shaking hands after a loss. It's a competitive thing. So I didn't think this is a funny comment from John Peebles. He writes, tomato, meaning a Raiders fan or not Raiders fan. The thing I always think is funny when people text this or type it out is it says tomato to me because nobody says tomato. And if you did say tomato, then this would say tomato because it's spelt the same way. So this is why whenever I text somebody tomato, I actually spell tomato, AHTO, so that they can actually see the phonetic spelling. Let's see. They lost the game because of the penalty. No, they did not. And I'm going to go over that in a second. And it was a penalty. I agree. So here's why that did not cost them the game. It wasn't the final play of the game. In fact, Kansas City had 3 pass plays following the penalty. Do you know what happened? Incomplete. So him lining up off sides made Patrick Mahomes wildly inaccurate, and he couldn't hit his targets. Darn him. Toney, how'd you do that?
I'm glad you pointed that out because I forgot, dude. Like, I watched so much football, I forget if they had any more plays after that. And yeah, you're right. So, like, that's even makes him more of a crybaby about it.
Yeah, he had a chance to still win that game to get him to a field goal range. It was a 3-point game. Get him within field goal range. That play, it would have been nice to get the touchdown. Yes. It stinks that it was called back. Yes. But it wasn't the last play of the game. You could have made up for it with a 10-yard pass and then a 5-yard pass and a 5-yard pass and gotten that first down. Instead, you threw it 3 incompletes. I put it on Mahomes at the end of the game.
I agree. Let's agree that they don't have the same team that they had last year. He doesn't have those receivers that he has last year. All he has is Kelsey, and if you lock up Kelsey, he's got nothing. It's got to be a one-man show.
And John puts the laughing faces, I'm guessing, for the tomato thing. And then and Taylor was there too. Oh, Taylor Swift. So I don't know if she's a jinx or a good luck charm. They won a few games with her there. All right, so I'm going to keep this. Actually, I'll switch the graphic because I didn't make a special graphic for the playoff picture, but I'll consider it part of the power rankings. AFC playoff picture, I wrote down here that the Ravens, obviously, number 1, they're going to get the bye, 10-3. And then you've got the Dolphins at 9-4, the Chiefs at 8-5, the Jaguars at 8-5, the Browns at 8-5, Steelers 7-6, Colts 7-6, and then on the outside looking in, you've got the Texans 7-6, Broncos 7-6, Bengals 7-6, Bills 7-6. So the bottom of that, from 3 through 11, is 1 win difference. So pretty crazy in the AFC.
Yeah, it's like everybody thought that the AFC was going to be like a really good, like going to be the power conference this year, and they're not. They're more middle of the pack, as you see with all these teams that are so similar, like in record. Like all the teams are literally 1 game apart, like you said. Like besides the top teams, it's crazy, dude. So, like, out of all the years I've been watching football, this is like the first time I've ever seen the AFC be this. I don't know if you want to call it bad or competitive or whatever you want to call it, but like all these teams so close, it's crazy. So it's like you have all of us. You have the Broncos 7-6, Texans 7-6, Bengals 7-6, Colts 7-6. Just those 4 teams are close. Then you have Browns and Jags, they're 8-5. Like, So it's just, yeah, dude, it's like crazy, like to see like who the final team is going to be at the final stretch of it all.
Well, you're going to like this because obviously this is an if thing, but theoretically, if the Broncos win out, there is a chance they could end up a 3 seed. This is a team that started the season giving up 800 yards to the Dolphins, and everyone thought they were trash. They were at the bottom of my supercomputer rankings, dead last, and they could end up the 3 seed in the AFC if they went out.
You see my smile, Wayne? Yes, they could. Yes, they could. I'm not going to say that right now. I just want them to keep winning and keep doing what they're doing. Like you'll hear in my 2-minute warning later. But yeah, we have the possibility of taking over the West this year and beating the Chiefs if the Chiefs happen to stumble. But the Chiefs play the Patriots and they play the Raiders and they play the Chargers, I think, and someone else. But their schedule is really easy going forward, so I don't see that happening. They probably will still win the West. I just want us to get in the dance because, like we said, once you get in the dance, anything can happen.
Okay. And I do know that we have a few more comments there. Jim says it's the Chiefs. Who cares if it's right or wrong? Yeah, I guess. I care. I like people getting it right. And we have a more competitive division. I'm guessing that's the AFC West. German, Virgin, Gut and Tight. Okay. And Raiders play them tough. I guess the Broncos. The Raiders play the Broncos tough. I mean, again, it's a division game. I think all division games, whether it's AFC East, NFC East, AFC West, if it's a division game, all bets are off. You know, you could have a team that's 11-0 go up against a team that's 5-6 and lose. Yeah.
Very true. I always say that. I always say division games are always a wild card because both teams know each other so well because they play each other so much, so they know how the other team just is. So, yeah, dude, they're always a wild card.
All right, now, because we're on the power rankings, I always throw yours up first. I want you to walk us through some of these here. I do have the correct graphics this week, believe it or not.
All right, good job, Wayne. Party on.
And we've got the 49ers, Ravens, Cowboys, Eagles, Dolphins, Lions, Chiefs, Jaguars, Browns, Bills, and then outside looking in, Broncos, Texans, Rams, Colts, and Bengals. So while the graphics up there, I guess I know you said this was a tough one to kind of put these in order. What was some of the struggles that you faced?
It was tough, man, because we were talking about because I do a lot of my power rankings on if they won or lost the week before. So a lot of the teams in the top they lost, and then so a lot of the records are similar. Like the top 4 teams I have in the rankings all have the same record, you know. So going by their record and if they lost last week, it was just really tough because the Browns had just won, and then the Lions had just lost, the Chiefs had lost, the Bills just won, then the Dolphins lost. So it was like a lot of the teams that have been in the top 10 have lost. So it was just figuring out where they were going to land, and in the teams on the outside, if I was going to put them in to the top 10. So that's a lot of reason why this week was really tough for me.
Well, I will say that Jim and John disagree on your rankings here. I have Jim says Dolphins is absolutely wrong. And then John says not bad. So, so I want to ask you this. So the Dolphins, I get it. I think I have them a little bit higher on the supercomputer rankings as well. We're going to get to that. But I wanted to ask you this. The Chiefs and the Lions both had very bad losses on Sunday. Well, the Chiefs wasn't a very bad loss, but it was a loss. The Lions had a bad loss to the Bears. Neither of them moved in your rankings. The Lions were 6 last week. They're 6 this week. The Chiefs were 7 last week. They're 7 this week. So they didn't move at all despite their losses.
Yeah, because like I was saying, they were still the top 10 in the power ranking. They just did lost. That's why I was like, do I take them out? Do I leave them in? And ultimately, I decided to leave them in.
Okay.
The only teams that jumped were the Browns and the Bills in my top 10.
Well, the supercomputer rankings do not take opinion into account. They do not take in how teams are playing or anything like that. It's just straight up numbers in, numbers out. And we put the numbers in order of the highest. And they are points per game ranking. The 49ers, again, way up in front in first place at 370.52 points per game. Then we have the Cowboys at 2, Ravens, Dolphins also at 4, so not unrealistic. Jaguars, Eagles dropped to 7, Browns, Chiefs, Bengals, Texans, Lions dropped to 12. Actually, the Lions lost 64 points per game with their loss to the Bears, and they dropped 5 spots. They were in 7th last week. And then we have, you go down to the Jets over here at 25. At 25, the Jets actually had the biggest gain at 53 points per game, and they moved up 2 spots. So, that's kind of how that played out. Didn't know if you had any thoughts or concerns regarding what the supercomputer spit out for us in terms of rankings.
I'm just hoping that my Broncos got to get out of this negative, man. I hate being in the negative.
Again, last week was a step in the right direction. Let me see what I have here for the Broncos. What did they do last week? With their win, the Broncos went up 1 spot. They gained 39 points per game, though. So if they keep that up, they'll get out there. But the problem is the last time they gained 40 points per game, they lost the following week.
Yeah. So, which we play the Lions this week, so it's a tough game. Yeah. So, out of your list, do you see any of the teams on the bottom being positive, possibly like the Broncos?
Well, I think we talked about this last week, and there are several teams that could move because there's a lot of teams in that 18, 17, 16, 9. Those are all positives. Then we have negative 5.5, negative 28.12. The problem with the Broncos is they're at negative 40. So in order to get to the positives, they have to have 2 good wins. I mean, good wins. So that if they beat Detroit by 15 or 20, and then they win the following week, they might actually – that's what they have to do to get to 0, right? They have to kind of have those 2 good wins. Yeah,
but this is one of those lists that like other teams losing helps them, right?
Correct, because it's all based on your averages per season. So even if you had a bye week, because there were a couple of teams with bye weeks, your first, second, third, fourth week, your opponents those weeks, their stats change week to week because of how.
Like, throw up your list again.
Yeah, for sure. Let's pull up the supercomputer rankings here.
So you have the Steelers as like the last positive team. And I feel like they're a team on the decline now. So I feel like at some point they're going to be in the negative. One of these negative teams is going to be in the positive. Right?
Again, you get the Packers are at negative 5.5. So they're right at the break. They were the
Chargers also. If you look, the Chargers and the Seahawks, those are both teams kind of on the decline also.
Yeah. And again, it's the supercomputer rankings, and I say this over and over again, they do not take into account what might happen down the road. They only take into account what has happened to this point. So even if a team is trending downwards, they're not going to fall because of that. They're only going to fall if they lose now, not.
No, right. No, I get that. I was just saying that, like, as me and you as people, we can see that, this team and that team, that they're on the decline. So at some point, they're going to be in the negative. Like, I know for sure the Chargers and the Steelers are going to end up in the negative.
I think I got caught up on some of these comments here. We do have Jim Powell says that the Jags at 8, Lawrence keeps a supercomputer in his nostril. A big nose joke. We get those. John says he can smell it, Jim. Yeah. In Detroit. Let's see. Broncos like the Chiefs. Who cares? That's right. We got Raiders fan. Comment, and it's binary, Mark. Nothing personal. That's right. That's why I say it's not my own opinion. My opinion has nothing to do with it. It's just the numbers in, numbers out. So, all right, let's get to a topic that's really setting me off the deep end. We are in the 2-minute warning. And yesterday, a report came out by Tom Curran that said that the New England Patriots have already decided that Bill Belichick is going to be done at the end of the year. He said somebody told him this, one of his imaginary sources. Tom Curran's great at making up sources. I think we talked about this a few shows ago, those reporters who say somebody close to the situation or somebody who knows somebody who went to school with somebody who bought a car from somebody who.
I love that.
Right. It's like Tom Curran, if you follow the New England Patriots, if you know anything about Tom E. Curran is the king of wanting to be relevant. This is how unimportant the story is. Our first show, I think, or maybe it was our second show, we talked about Tom E. Curran saying that Bill Belichick was going to go to the Redskins, the Commanders. He was going to go to the Commanders in a trade. We're the only other news outlet that picked it up. Like, nobody else picked up that story. So he was like, man, I need to get more attention. So he goes out and says, I have sources saying that, this is what's going to happen. Meanwhile, Justin Trudell, who comes out, he works at Barstool Sports, and he said he talked to people within the front office who said it's completely false, and they're completely disappointed that Tom E. Curran would even release that story. because the reality is Tom E. Curran is a liar. He has no sources. Bob Kraft doesn't talk to him. Bill Belichick doesn't talk to him. He's making it up. He's been writing all year long about how this is going to be Belichick's last year, and nobody's listening to him. So now he has to make up a source that told him. And maybe he didn't make it up. Maybe it was the ball boy. Maybe it was the janitor, right? And there's nothing wrong with those people. They overhear things, but they didn't overhear this. This is the kind of thing that doesn't get overheard. It's said behind closed doors. And I guarantee you, Tom E. Curran did not talk to anybody behind closed doors about this.
No, good point. I will just push back a little. Well, not push back, but I did hear that he pushed back a little and said that they could change their minds, from now until the end of the season from when they made that decision or whatever. So he's already kind of recanting what he's saying in a way.
Well, he does that a lot. Curran actually will couch things. So he'll say things like, Tommy Curran in the offseason said, the relationship between the Patriots and Tom Brady is so fractured that Tom Brady will never go back to Gillette. Then they had Tom Brady Day at Gillette, the first week of the season, but he couched it in that same interview by saying, I mean, I haven't talked to Tom. He hasn't talked to me since I interviewed his dad. So he's kind of like, he'll say these really outrageous things, but then couch it by saying, well, I didn't actually talk to him personally.
That's kind of what it sounded like with this also, is I was like, he makes this big statement that all these news outlets had picked up because he mentioned this. I wish you would have picked up the sound clip, because I heard the sound clip of it earlier today, and I was just like blown away by the stuff that he really thinks he knows. Like I don't really know how much he knows, but he thinks he knows a lot, and that's why he's coming out and saying all this stuff. And I'm not a Patriots fan, but if I was a Patriots fan, I don't think I would be too happy right now.
I said to you last night, right, when we were talking about this, I said Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft only leak information to two people. That's Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network and Adam Schefter of ESPN. They don't leak to anyone else.
We've heard nothing from either of them.
So. Neither of them. They haven't even come out and commented on Tom Curran's thing, because that's how, toxic this is. You don't touch it. Like, this is something he made up out of the blue. I will say on this topic, John says BB should retire. I disagree. I think he's still the best coach in the NFL today. I think that he just needs a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. His defense is amazing. And let's see, I saw BB clickbait and Barstool about the Chargers. Well, if he does leave, the Chargers make sense. I think if he leaves, he goes to the Giants because he's got deep roots with the Giants. He was the DC there. He won 2 Super Bowls there under Parcells. So I think if he does leave, the Giants make the most sense because he has so much respect for that organization. Kraft may need a hand in making this decision. Hey, don't we all? And let's see. Here's that attention you ordered. That's right. Thank you, John. That's exactly the attention that he is looking for. And now it's over. The 24-hour news cycle is over. So the next report will be a week or two from now. He'll be talking about how one of his sources told him that the Patriots' next coach is blank. And it keeps going. He loves the attention. He's a whore. Tom E. Curran is a whore. I said, right, that's my sound bite for today. Mark, what do you have for your 2-minute warning?
All right. So I wasn't totally sure if I was going to do this, Wayne, but we talked about it and you kind of gave me the okay. And I'm going to do it. Like, this isn't football related. This is basketball related. I'm a Nuggets fan. I watch the Nuggets games every night when there was never not football on. And last night the Nuggets played the Bulls. And if anybody that doesn't know basketball, Nikola Jokic is like the best player in the league. He plays for the Nuggets. And last night in Chicago, it was Serbian night, which, if anybody knows who Nikola Jokic is, he's Serbian. He's from Serbia. And last night he was ejected from the game. He was ejected from the game because he thought he was fouled. He's kind of gained a reputation around the league that he complains about not getting calls, but it's kind of a true thing that he doesn't get calls. And so last night he didn't get a call and he started complaining about it to the ref and he gets ejected from the game, which at the time when you're watching the game, you see it as really egregious. Like, why is he being ejected for just complaining? So then today it comes out that he comes out and he runs down the court telling the ref hey, effer, call the no, what did he say? Call the effing foul, you mother effer. And that's what he called the ref. So the ref, I can see, got mad by saying something like that. Like, all I know, like, look, the way I looked at it is like, I see a big ass dude coming at me, calling me a mother effer. I might eject him from the game too. But what I'm going to say is like, that was a totally egregious thing to do to him, because I guarantee a lot of other players have said worse or just the same thing and haven't been tossed. They might have gotten technical fouls, which Joker should have got last night. And it also came out that said that Joker doesn't have a relationship with a lot of these refs. He's not really friendly with them. There's other players in the league that have tension with refs, but they have some sort of like relationship with them. So the refs kind of give them some leeway. And so because the refs don't have any relationship with Joker, this is why they did that to him. But in my opinion, is even if he doesn't have a relationship with these refs, his status as a player, two-time MVP, national champion, his accolades should give him some sort of respect. And he's not getting it. He's never gotten it, and he should get it. And I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I'm going to disagree with you. I'm actually going to kind of agree with some of these comments here. John says, sounds like a diva. Sounds like a Chiefs player, right? And then we have over-emotional. You asked the wrong person. I was an umpire for 39 years. John, thank you for your service, because I will tell you that being an umpire or official in an amateur league, whether it's kids, especially adults, is a nightmare. It is a nightmare, whether it's the parents.
Wait. Was he over-emotional, or who's over-emotional?
He's saying Jokic was over-emotional.
Okay.
So
I thought he was saying the ref was over emotional.
And then Jim says it's hockey season. Let's go Pens. So he doesn't care. Well, here's my thing. Like, listen, I refereed a couple men's league games, so I've done my tour of duty, and I will never go back. I did not re-sign up for any more, because it is a nightmare. You're trying to do your best. You're trying to watch the game and make the right calls, but you just can't. It's such a hard thing to do, to be an official in any sport. And I understand where this referee is coming from, because he's saying, mother effer call, whatever. Here's what happened to me. I was reffing. I had a guy. I still remember the guy's name. I won't say it. It started with a P. But this guy was mad that I was not blowing the whistle. He got the ball stolen from him. Maybe it was a foul. Maybe it wasn't. I was doing my best to see it. And he said, Wayne, he goes, would you blow the whistle? I said, okay. And I blew the whistle and gave him a T. Like, don't yell at the referee. They're there to officiate the game. Don't be a baby. Don't get in their face. Don't call them mother effers. I don't care if it's Serbian night. I don't care if it's Nikola Jokic night. I don't care if it's the Denver Nuggets will not eject anybody tonight, or everyone gets $1 million night. Do not get in the referee's face. All right? Like, just play the game. I do think Jokic does have a reputation as being a bit of a complainer. So do some other guys. Doncic, Luka Doncic is the worst. I mean, he's always complaining.
Him and Devin Booker, they both do. But like I was saying, they have some sort of relationship with these refs. Joker doesn't, because he doesn't get a technical. He gets ejected. That was egregious. It should have been a technical, not ejected from the game. Like, gross and tougher skin. You can't be. This is pro sports. You're going to be called mother effer more than once.
No, you shouldn't be. The players play, the refs ref, and that's the way it should be. John People says, you want sympathy? Look between shit and syphilis in the dictionary. That's where you'll find sympathy. Let's see. Never took crap because I have it back. Oh, never gave crap because I gave it back. Or I gave it back. Yeah, I don't know. I've never. I think I've had 2 emotional outbursts in a basketball game in my life. One of them was I was running down as a fast break. I was on defense. I was defending a guy, and he gave me a forearm shove and went up for the layup, and they called a foul on me. Now, if they didn't call anything, I would have been fine. Even though he gave me the shove, I was like, hey, well, it's basketball. It can be physical. I don't mind that. But they called me for a foul, and I was just running next to him, and he pushed me, right? And they called me for the foul, so I threw the ball to the other end of the court. And they didn't tee me up. Like you said, having that relationship with the refs, I always had good relationships with the refs because I never complained about anything. And so somebody just went down and got the ball and brought it back. But I had another one where I had gotten an N1, and I was just really excited. And I said, yeah, again, didn't get in the ref's face about it or anything like that. But I'm a robot out there. I don't have any emotions. And that's what I would say all players should be robots. Just go out there, play the game. You get called for a foul and you never touch the guy. Tough luck, part of the game.
No, you're right. I feel like Joker shouldn't have complained as much as he did, but like I said, he should get a little bit more respect, and he doesn't. And you're right, but he should, he needs to play better. Like I always have this saying that players need to play better than refs ref. And it's just how it is. And he didn't do that last night, and that's why he got ejected. He said the wrong thing at the wrong time, and he got tossed.
All right. Well, final 3 comments of the night. We do have John says, I bet it was LeBron, LMAO. Jim says, in my opinion, if a parent, player, or anyone else can do it better, hand them the whistle and see how it works out. Yes, Jim, that was my thing, is that when I refereed a game, I said I will never complain about an official ever again because this is hard. I mean, really, really hard. And I'm talking about just refereeing men, like 27-year-old men. I can't imagine refereeing an NBA game or a college game. Nightmare. And then John correctly said, excuse me, LaFlop. And then supposed to be professional. Absolutely be professional. Act like you've been there before. Act like you've gotten fouled and it's not a big deal because you might get away with it on the other end. So just chill. All right. Whew, deep breath. God, great show tonight. I had a great time. John, Jim, thanks for sticking with us from start to finish, bell to bell. You guys are the best. I'm going to send you a personal message after the show because I do appreciate you guys doing it. Anybody else who wants to listen, who wants to join in, we do answer these comments. We do post the comments. Suggest an idea. We'll make it your topic when we talk about it in the show. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Mark, hey, had a great time. I'm sure you want to thank the guys as well.
Yes, thanks, Jim and John.
Yep.
Okay, thank you guys. Yes, for sure, doing bell to bell. Maybe next time you could help us come up with a rundown since you guys chimed in so much. I'm just joking. But yeah, thanks for chiming in, guys. That was awesome.
All right. And thank you, everybody who's been listening, downloading, watching the show. You have been watching the NFL expert, the other guy. I mean, the NFL experts. So that's it. Thank you for joining us. See you, Mark. We'll see you next week.
Party on, Wayne.
Party on, Mark.